All right, let's go ahead and show you how to replace your motors. In case you do actually want to replace your motors and it comes down the line where a motor is actually malfunctioning and you bought the part yourself, I'll show you how to quickly replace them yourself. So let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and place your board on a flat surface that you can work on, and then you're not afraid to scratch. And if you are, go ahead and place a blanket or carpet down like we have. So, step number one, you're going to notice 3 screws on the outside of your hub motor setup. You're going to want to go ahead and pull out your multi-tool that we provided for you, or the actual the part that is the equivalent. Make sure you find the one that fits. This one is actually going to be the second one in from the smaller side. Again, this one's for the battery case, and this one right next to it is going to be for the hub motors. So, go ahead and remove the outside casing. Make sure you do not lose the tiny little washer that is on the inside. So again, make sure you keep these in a safe, clean spot that you're not working, so you don't lose them. All right, there we go. All right, so one way to get these off easily is go ahead and just grab the biggest screw that you can fit inside and twist it towards the hub like so. It will pop it off. If you find it too difficult or you find that you're damaging the actual aluminum wheel cover, go ahead and send it in if you're not confident. You're now going to expose the outside of the wheel. As you can see here, we have a standard skate tool size bolt and nut on the inside. So take the side of your T-tool that goes ahead and fits on here and remove by twisting it counterclockwise. So there is a little spacer on this side, I believe. Keep your hardware and accessories in a safe spot where you can easily see if you have lost any. Something white usually works really well because then you can actually see if you've lost one of the accessories, or see all of them and they don't blend in with the surface. So now you're going to want to pull the hub motor off of the actual truck hanger. So just do so by sliding it delicately to the end. As you will see here, it appears I've reached the end of my line. So you want to go ahead and, for the wheel that you're replacing, take a crescent wrench or something that will not gouge the actual outside of the grommet here, or make sure you place something over it when you actually go to untighten it. This will avoid any kind of unsightly marks you make on the grommet head. So, as you can see, I just needed to undo it a little bit just to allow for it to be unfinger tightened. So, pull some excess wire out here to allow you to remove it now safely from the hub without any complications. There you go. And you will just have enough room here to safely remove it. So if you see the technique I use, I reach the end of the line here and I pull and twist with this end closest to right here when I'm removing, at about at the same angle as where the motor controller is. And there you go. You've now removed your truck, or your wheel from the truck. You're going to want to go ahead now and set the wheel off to the side if you want, and go ahead and remove the 4 screws on the motor controller. It's going to be this one right here on the skate tool we send you. The biggest one on the smallest side of Allen keys. Now remove 4 screws. You're going to want to make sure your board's off, by the way. You don't want to do this while the battery's on. if you ever wanted to switch the polyurethane on your wheels, it's easiest to do this with them on the actual truck. Why? Because when you pull them off, you're just removing these 3 screws right here, and you pull directly off of the wheel hub, and this will lock the hub motor onto here, and it's a little bit easier to do than you would by hand. So we'll have another video for that shortly. Once you've removed all 4 screws, put them in a safe place, and then move to the next step, which will be to flip over the ESC and remove the protective waterproofing cover. There is a lock washer on the inside of these screws, as per the other ones, just for your own measures. So make sure that you have them intact, or make sure that they're safely buried into the actual case, and then you apply the screw that does not have one into the same location on here. So these 2 didn't want to come out, but I'm sure I will grab them in a second. Now, you're going to notice that your case isn't going to want to move. So, if you're not replacing the other wheel, now would be a great time just to remove the truck hanger for easy access. So, you don't have to undo the other side if you're not replacing it, but if you are, go ahead and copy the steps we just did here to remove so. Once you free the washer, or the truck kingpin nut, you're going to want to go ahead and remove the top bushing. It's this little rubber piece that sits on the kingpin underneath this washer. Again, you want to keep the parts nearby in a non-working area so you don't lose them. So, how you remove the truck is you go ahead and just lift it off forward and up at the same time. So, you're going to move it this way and up, kind of like this. And if it gives you difficulties, just kind of give it a little wiggle and clear the kingpin and the truck hanger hole. So again, like so, and up. And now you've freed your motor controller. So after you remove your truck and wheel, you're going to want to go ahead and just pull your case directly back, but not all the way. I usually use the wheel as a support and stop for it to go all the way, because you may not have enough slack in your wire here to pull it back over safely. So go ahead and do not force anything. Try to remove the 6 screws we have on the bottom plate here in the motor control. As you can see, this is why you safely store your hardware, so you don't lose any. They're very easy to get lost. Now you're going to want to remove the weather stripping, or pry it open safely. As you see, I just take a razor blade and I put it in on one of the edges and I just pry it up just enough to get something under it. And then go ahead and stick something else under it, but not all the way, because keep in mind there are sensitive electronics in here you do not want to have metallic or ferrous contact with to cause a spark or damage. So, go ahead and when you have this now safely pried open just a little bit, go ahead and take a old ID or book card and safely move it around the exterior of the actual case to remove the weather stripping. Try not to damage your ID. There you go. You've now exposed the motor housing. As you can see, we have everything sealed up here very nice and tight, so if anything ever does happen with your board being submerged, it'll still work. This makes it IP76 certified right here. So, first thing you're going to do is the motor that you are replacing, you're going to want to locate its wire and make sure that the outside weatherproof grommet is actually loosened and freed, like so. You've now freed it. As you see, there's a little bit of extra slack in here for these motor controller wires. And just like on the battery replacement, we're going to want to go ahead and remove these connectors here. Ta-da! As you see, we have super nice connectors now for our batteries. They should easily now be removed. But before, you want to make sure you remove these little connector here and remove the wires for the wheel. And then you're going to want to remove the Hall sensor motor, Hall sensor wires right here. Trace the cables down to the wheel that you're actually replacing and gently pull open right here. One trick to do is go ahead and take a razor blade or something equally as hard but not metal conductive and push open right here in these two slots. It may be a little difficult to remove, but it's best to do this than to actually pull on the wires to possibly damage them. So, gently pull out the Hall sensor here. It does help to kind of wiggle it. Once you free your sensor, we'll get started on the next step. There we go. So, as you see, I have freed completely the motor wires and the sensor wires for the actual cable from this wheel. You're going to want to safely pull out the sensors and the cables first. So, I don't know if this. All right. Now that you've placed in or removed your old wheel from the grommet here, go ahead and insert it into the grommet again. You want to pull all the slack that you can afford right now to make it easier for yourself. So, once you have enough slack in there, you will only have one type of one way that this will actually fit in. As you can see, our new connectors are actually really cool and only allow you to connect it one way. So when you turn it on, both wheels should spin the same direction without any headache. You want to go ahead and connect that connector and make sure you replace the Hall sensor, which allows for proper tracking of the motor rotation with the ESC, which allows for maximum efficiency of the motor. So, we have now connected the Hall sensor appropriately. Try to do this one wheel at a time if you are working on replacing your wheels, so then you don't mess up the configuration and it would start backwards if you did mix them up. So, you want to now close up this case nicely, leave the slack out of the wire for right now, and don't worry about it until you go to close this up and flip it back over. So, we are now going to go ahead and connect the water protecting case to the board again. So, make sure you have enough slack, seal it up yourself with some nice weather stripping. Silicone works best. And don't apply it while it's wet, and let it dry properly if you are doing this repair yourself. So, insert the screws into the holes that you can actually not see all the way through. You can see here the difference. These are actually recessed. These are countersunk holes right here. So you can actually see that the top countersink of the screw will now actually go back in. You are replacing 6 screws back into this configuration again. So, once you have them all in, go ahead and tighten them down. You want to do so by hand in case you don't want to strip the screws into the case. Now, you want to flip the motor controller back down gently on its stomach. It is best to try and line up the screen print you can see here so that you actually have the alignment on the holes to the bottom side again. So make sure that this line is lined up, and it should go in a straight line right here if you're looking at it from the side. So one way you can check is just use a small screw or something that fits inside of the actual hole. You can actually find the setting that we have embedded into the board for the actual bolt, and it will help line it up. So there we go. We have that lined up. We're now going to make sure that we insert our screws again with the lock washer on them so they don't fall out while you're riding. I lost one. Let's go ahead and now tighten the screws back down to the bottom of the board. Again, the trick to make sure that you don't cross thread these is just to go ahead and make sure that it's set into the setting and twist it backwards until you hear that popping noise. Right there. Right there. Right there. So, just after you hear the popping, go ahead and tighten it down again. And it should just very easily screw into the board now without any force. If you are forcing it, you're probably cross-threading it and damaging your board. I always find it easiest to go ahead and do a cross pattern when tightening these down. So if I started over here, I now move to this one to apply even force eventually down on everything. I tighten them down just lightly before I actually tighten them down to their final resting location. One more time round. So just snug on there, and let's go ahead and tighten this one down, which is the last one. And then I'll go ahead and tighten them down to their final tightness in the same manner. There. So we had to remove the hanger to allow for the actual tension of the board to come off here. So let's go ahead and put the hanger back on. Make sure that you have the bottom bushing and washer properly on the kingpin here, and that you have the actual rubber insert inside the truck pin or the truck hanger here. And go ahead and insert the bottom little nipple here into the actual truck base, and then make sure the kingpin is guided successfully over the hole, and just set it down nicely right there. You'll notice it's a little wobbly, so let's go ahead and put on the remaining piece, which is going to be the bushing, the top bushing, and the washer that comes with it. And there you go. If you notice that this is now shorter, it's probably because your kingpin's actually been sunken in, but these are pressed in, so they should not back out. Go ahead and tighten them down now. It's going to be the biggest side of your T-tool. You usually want to tighten it past the nylon lock at the top of the nut, just for the sake that it will actually not back itself out. It's the feature of the nylock washer or nuts. So, once you get it down to your desired tightness, or somewhere relative like that, you're going to want to make sure that you pull out your wheel. Some of the slack you had on the inside will make this easier, and guide it over the outside of the truck hanger. You notice there's a little square piece right here. This is actually going to be the key to which you want to pair up the wheel motor to, or the motor to. I want to put the motor wire to the front side of the truck towards the nose, but on the bottom side as it's facing right now. You will notice that it will not press in completely until it has matched its spot correctly. And once you do so, you can see there's no gap here. You want to make sure this gap is as small as possible. And you do so by successfully pairing this right here. You'll see until I move it to its correct location, it does not match. There we go. So now, what you want to do is go ahead and put the nut that you pulled off the outside of the wheel back onto the board. Just do so like so. It's the smaller side of the T-tool that we've provided with for you. You want to tighten it down as snug as possible. We do actually have bearings in here that will allow you to tighten it down as tight as possible and still give it rotation. It's engineered this way, so just be sure to snug it tightly, but don't force it, because you may break your skate tool, or you may end up causing yourself a headache in the long run by breaking something. So, once you have that on, now's an easy time to show you how to replace the PU on the hub wheel. Let's go ahead and find the appropriate Allen key and remove the outside of the wheels. There we go. There's one. And you're just going to be removing 3 of these. There we go. Set the board down. And this is why it was easier if you had it on there, because it actually locks the hub motor on there. So, now that you've removed your PU, go ahead and toss it and replace it with your new piece. Make sure that you keep the inside bearing here for the replacement of the new wheel. You were provided with a smaller set of wheels in case you don't want to deal with the very, very heavy luggish actual PU here. These are about half the weight, and they're just as good of a wheel for everyday riding. But if you want a little bit more aggressive of a ride, use these. So we're gonna go ahead and put this back on. Remember, the ones in your kit, you have 2 different sizes. These come on them, and these are the replacement wheels that you see in your provided package. If you do replace the front wheels, make sure that you put on the appropriate size PU on the back wheels to match the height of the new replacement wheels. Otherwise, these should be fine. You can order these from our online store. So, what you're going to want to do is put the star ring back inside the wheel hub, like so. Press fit it, just gently, like that. When you go to apply it to the wheel again, you're going to want to do so like so. You're going to notice that when you twist the wheel here, you find a marriage point that will allow you to press it in further. As you see, there's still a little bit of a gap there, if you can see, and then I'm going to turn it until it locks in. And then I press it in like so. Make sure that your lock ring out here is properly spacing the wheel around the hub motor, like so, and then apply the bolts. These don't have lock washers on them, so make sure that when you reapply them, you don't look for the washers because they don't exist. So, it is in a 3 pattern, so go ahead and put them like so, and go ahead and tighten them down. Make sure that these are tight, because these will affect your ride if they are not. Once you have them snug and the washer is secure, go ahead and continue with your wheel exchange. So, take your hub cap and go ahead and line the 3 bolts with these 3 bolts right here. If you damage your hub during this whole process, make sure you just order a new one from us. We'll have parts in stock in our store. So, go ahead and grab your hub motor screws, make sure the lock nut or the lock washer is on them, and then reapply them into the wheel cap, like so. Remember, it's the second one in on the lowest side. That's what you don't want to do. And then there you go. Just tighten them down snugly, not too tight, or you may actually strip the threading on the aluminum hubs. So, Once you have them in, you should be good to go. Now one last step before you go out and get riding again. Make sure you put any excess wire back inside the ESC case. It should kind of find its own home in there. Make sure that you put the weather stripping right here with the actual locking nozzle, which is on the inside of the outside nut of the grommet here. These should bind into each other. So match them like so. So now they are actually inside of each other. And press them back into the fitting here, like so. You can still at this point push in any kind of excess wire or match them like so before you actually lock them into place to make it waterproof. Try to give yourself enough slack to allow for movement. So one way is just to do this, and that gets to the max extents of your actual truck's travel. So go ahead and now press those in and tighten down this nut here. Remember, you can finger tighten this, and what you'd want to do is use a crescent wrench to reapply it, or when you do go to tighten it down, make sure you put something like a rag on the outside and make sure that you're actually grabbing the nut to not damage it, just to make it tight. And you don't damage the nice finish on the actual nut. So, just finger tight should do. And it is now waterproof again. So, that's how you replace your wheels on your board in case you ever wanted to, and the PUs. Now let's go out and ride.